what are our top criteria for selecting an MDR provider?
Yeah, so I sort of set the baseline with question 2.
Yep.
So now I'll just kind of give you these are good questions just to ask verbatim, right? 1,
Sure.
What security signals are you able to monitor and protect? This goes back to the breadth or the scope of the visibility. And honestly, if there's a dark part in your environment, guaranteed that's where bad guys are going to come in. Give you a quick example. We just dealt with a financial customer. They were attacked using fog, or which is a later variant of ransomware. Yep. And in that case, they attacked 6 devices which were being monitored by Microsoft Defender, or had Microsoft Defender on them. They were not monitored by us. So we didn't see all that inferential stuff that I was talking about. They were able, but as soon as they touched one of the points, the devices that we were monitoring in their environment, we caught it right away. In fact, we caught it within seconds and stopped it. Those other devices were locked down. So that's a bit messy, but the reality is, this is why it's important to know, can they see everything, right? Where are they pulling from? What metrics and reporting do they help, or do they offer to help your organization effectively track and understand your security posture? So a lot of what security does is going to help you with things like risk assessments, compliance standards, et cetera. So what can you look at? Can they tell you, like, here's the top 10 things, man, you've got a noisy environment. If you just invested in this technology, you could, by 90% reduce the amount of threats you're seeing. Get more proactive here. Don't just be responsive to everything that's coming through your door. That's messy and dirty. And eventually, someone's going to make a mistake, right? You're going to leave something vulnerable and somebody's going to get in and exploit it. Other things are, I talked about visibility in your environment. Regulatory industries, this is another one. What kind of reporting do you provide, right? Most companies, or many companies, are going to have to deal with the alphabet soup of financial regulators. For HIPAA with healthcare, PCI if you're managing credit card data. You may be looking at NIST standards, right? You might say, well, how do we map to 171 as an example, or ISO, or whatever it might be. CMMC is another big one if you're, if you deal with FedRAMP and government, federal government, DoD contractors and vendors as customers, right? So what have they got baked in? What about things like compliance reporting? Can I see things like stale accounts, invalid passwords, any GPO policy violations, simple things like that. And I know it doesn't sound fancy, and it's not, but at the end of the day, it's the brushing and flossing of security, right? If you're catching a lot of that stuff, you're going to prevent many of these attacks, because as I always say with bad guys, even the sophisticated threat actors are still using very rudimentary tactics and techniques, right? So it's still things like phishing to compromise or to steal credentials. They're using remote administrative tools or exploiting PowerShell to get in. None of this is in terms of security. Like for us, we see this every day, right? So it's pretty common for us to see, but it's how they put that together, right? I use this quick analogy. It's the master chef, right? They could walk in your kitchen and they could take chicken and some vegetables and, some oils and whatever, and they could cook you this delicious meal. And why did they do that? Because it's the same ingredients that you buy every day, right? It was in your fridge. It's because they have that mastery of putting it all together and understanding it. That's what criminals can do. So you want to make sure that you can plug those basic holes. And then another piece of this is, how do they provide scalability and flexibility, right? Because the reality is, what you see today is not what you're going to have tomorrow, right? So, in banking, maybe you bring on new online marketing services. In healthcare, you've got new patient wearable devices. Manufacturing, the same thing, connecting your factory floor to your front office, all that kind of stuff, right? And when it comes to the detection part, what machine learning are they using? How are they catching those inferential signs of badness? I think for me, that's just a huge one. And then lastly, because I know we got to watch our time here, is I'm going to say the big one here is, how do they interact with the customers in the MSP? How do they interact with you, right? So what's their customer support look like? Do they have an assurance department that works with you, that helps with things like specialized reporting or answering questions for you? Or are they just doing the tactical tackling and blocking, and that's kind of it, and they're not willing to help you with any of the sort of strategic work that you might? So you really want to kind of challenge that and understand how they work, because what you'll see from a tier 1 SOC analyst dealing with basics is not what you want to expect from a team leader at tier 3. And then also, like I said, just looking at everything that's happening in your environment monthly, quarterly, and understanding what can we do to lower the noise, right? To reduce the noise in your environment so that everyone focuses on signal. And ultimately, from a business perspective, that's about understanding and justifying why you put your budget where you do, right? You can use that to qualify why you need to spend and you can use it to demonstrate the value or the return on investment that you get from it.